You got Mac and Mac, McMullen and McDonald here on Birds 365. Thanks for streaming in. We got Johnny Stolnis from Bleeding Green Nation and his Eye on the Enemy football podcast. Check it out where you get your better podcasts. John, I know you were sitting there waiting for us. Sorry for taking so long to get to you. Our apologies. We got off on a tangent. But I want to get off on a tangent with you. First things first. James Bradberry, stay or go? Let me give you the facts. I'm sure you know them, but for our streaming people, if they cut him, they save $7 million and change in salary, but they take a $9 million cap hit. So it's going to cost you $2 million. It's going to cost you $9 million, as a matter of fact, but $2 million more above and beyond what you're supposed to pay him to just get rid of him, to run him out the door. Then you have to replace him. I'm sure they'll ask Bradberry to restructure and redo his deal. And if he goes, no, we just cut this deal 12 months ago, and now you want to renege? No. The deal's good by me. And then they have to make a call. Do you cut him? Do you cut James Bradberry and take a $9 million dead cap hit just to get him off the team?
We've seen him take bigger dead cap hits in the past. And when I think I was reading earlier this week that the salary cap could jump to like $250 million per team. So, I mean, there's going to be a lot of money for teams to play with here this offseason. I think if you believe that Bradberry is cooked as a cornerback, and it sure looked for all the world this year like he was cooked as a cornerback, you don't think he can transition to safety, and he doesn't want to play safety. This is a team that you have to prioritize getting the best players on the roster possible to keep that Super Bowl window open while some of these guys are in their prime, while you still have Devontae Smith and A.J. Brown and Goddard all on the field at the same time. You've got these two new coordinators who are coming in here expected to win right away. And Nick Sirianni really is playing for his job here this year. So I feel like this isn't a situation where you've got to jettison guys who you don't think can get the job done anymore, even if it means you take a cap hit that is still much less than previous cap hits that you've taken and that you've been able to work around. So yeah, I would probably say if they believe Bradberry's cooked, he can't play safety, I would probably say goodbye.
All right, let me play devil's advocate. I didn't know where Jody was going, but I'll go down the Bradberry route. One, they could do it post-June 1st and it'd be a little bit better. I'll double check the numbers, but they could designate it post-June 1st if they want to cut him. But I'm saying just for the question of keeping him or just getting rid of him because he didn't play well last year. You're going to have a better defensive coordinator who in theory will understand how to use a zone corner a little bit better than Sean Desai. He's got him moving in the slot. He's got him moving all over. He was in for Slay when Slay was injured, moving, flopping sides of the field. If you stick him where he's comfortable, maybe it gets better. Maybe not to the point he's going to be a second-team All-Pro, but you could at least say that. And he's got a history of having a bad year and coming back and having a good year. You had a bad year. Who's to not say he'll have a good year? From that perspective, do you just leave it up to Vic Fangio and say, all right, I'm the sooth. I'm the sooth. If I think this guy can play, let's keep him.
Yeah, for sure.
That's a possibility.
I do. I mean, if Vic Fangio looks at, maybe there's some stuff going on, like you mentioned, with the size defense, and certainly with Matt Patricia at the end of the season, it was a total cluster, and no one knew what they were doing. It's hard to really look at anybody in the last 6 games of the season and put a whole lot of stock in poor performance, with the exception of effort and tackling and all that kind of stuff. But like with Bradberry, his problems were all season long, and it appeared physically he was a step slow, which was a killer for the Eagles back of the defense this year. But I get, like you said, he's had bad years. I think the season before he came to Philadelphia, one of the reasons the Giants let him go was because he didn't have a particularly good season. And then he came and had a all-pro type season for the Eagles in the Super Bowl season. So I don't know. You're right. I imagine they're looking at stuff. I imagine they're looking at metrics and internal numbers that give them a better idea of what James Bradberry is capable of. But from the eye test, it just didn't look like he had it anymore. And I don't know. I mean, Vic Fangio is a a legendary defensive coordinator for a reason. He's put up some really good numbers with some defenses and stuff before, but when a player's done, I'm not sure how much Vic Fangio can work with there with Bradberry if he really has lost the step that it appeared he lost.
And nobody ever likes to admit to this, but it's just a fact, Jack. How you replace him is as important as the evaluation you have on him, because if you don't have a replacement, then you might as well keep him and give it a shot. Do you think the Eagles will take a cornerback in the first round of the draft?
It's certainly a possibility. It's certainly one of the things that I think that they'll do there. They could also try and land a free agent land a cornerback in the free agent market. I think it's more likely they go cornerback in free agency. L'Jarius Sneed is out there, and it sounds like they're going to get
come on.
Yeah, and I doubt it. But
you know he's getting franchise tagged.
Well,
don't tease these fine Eagle fans to believing that Sneed is going to be available. He's going to be on the Chiefs.
Well, what about Chris Jones? I mean, if they can't get a long-term deal done with Chris Jones, they could franchise Chris Jones instead of Sneed. You know, I mean, they only got one of those things that they can hand out. So it's really going to depend whether or not the Chiefs can sign Jones to an extension, or whether they do that with Sneed or whatever it is they decide to do. And you're right. If they do decide to, and they should make every effort to keep him, to keep that unbelievable secondary in place, they should absolutely do that. But I mean, I think you're right. There's not a whole lot out there that I think the Eagles are going to spend a ton of money for in free agency. Stephon Gilmore is going to be available. You've got some other guys who could be out there, but certainly the first round of the draft is possible. And I as badly as we want the Eagles to start investing in linebacker and in safety, they're not taking one of those guys in the first round of the draft. Like, there's just, I can't imagine Howie Roseman doing a complete 180 like that and saying, okay, first round, even though it is kind of like it's a late in the first round pick. I don't see a linebacker or safety first round. So yeah, it could very well be a corner for sure.
Yeah, definitely the position he'll consider. And they haven't drafted a cornerback in the first round. I know everybody points to that. It's been a while, but they wanted to. It hasn't worked out. So they wanted J.C. Horn. They wanted Patrick Surtain. It didn't work out for him. There were people speculating they would take Christian Gonzalez last year if they weren't able to get Jalen Carter. So they've been interested in cornerbacks in the first round. So it's a position they value. But to get, I want to, because it's difficult to nail down players, and, Sneed's a great player, and Chris Jones, his contract makes it difficult for Kansas City to franchise him. So that's the perspective of, you can't franchise Chris Jones because you got to pay him 125%, yada, yada, yada. And if Sneed isn't available, it kind of falls off the table pretty quickly from a veteran standpoint. So I want to ask you philosophy-wise, John, where are you with this team in the fact that, do you want a Band-Aid at corner? And this is saying you're done with Bradberry. Steven Nelson's out there. You bring who's played well with Houston since he left Philadelphia. But I mean, he's a Band-Aid. It's not a guy you're going to build a foundation on. Where are you philosophy-wise of saying, you know what? Let's just throw Kelee Ringo out there. Let's get younger. Let's get more speed on the field. Let's see where he is. Let's build that way, as opposed to, no, we're a Super Bowl contender. We got to make sure we have experience in place.
Yeah, I think the latter for me. This is a Super Bowl caliber team. I don't think Kelee Ringo can be your starting CB2 next year, especially because I think Darius Slay played pretty well this year when he was out there, but Darius Slay is not the lockdown cornerback that he used to be, and that's not really the type of defense the Eagles play anyway. But I like Kelee Ringo. I think he looked pretty good. I think entering the season with him as your starter would be akin to putting all of your chips on the Nakobe Dean front again. I mean, it's just, you saw a little something that you liked in this kid. You drafted him relatively high. I mean, he wasn't an early pick, but you've invested something in him. But I feel like if you're going to be a Super Bowl contender right now, and again, Nick Sirianni's job is on the line here in 2024, then I think you got to do more than Kelee Ringo at cornerback. And I think if you go early in the draft, then certainly you're drafting someone in the first round to start for you. And that would make sense. That would certainly go along with what Howie Roseman's philosophy has been in the past, to go, target cornerback, spend big money on cornerback, defensive line, offensive line. That makes sense to me. And I would feel uncomfortable with Keely Ringo as the starter, just like I was uncomfortable with Nakobe Dean, just everybody assuming he's going to be the linebacker that could lock down the middle of the field this year.
No, and they're putting eggs right back into that Nakobe Dean basket. I can guarantee you that. And it is a little shaky 2 years in, even though I'm still a fan of his talent level. How about the running back position? We're checking off all the boxes of what the Eagles will need to address during this offseason. And running back is certainly one of them. See, this DeAndre Swift was on just a 1-year deal.
Mm-hmm. Swift
coming back, free agent. You talked about the safety and the linebacker not being a position they're going to take a guy in the first round. Oh, they sure as hell aren't taking a running back in the first round. Did they give it more? Left Kellen Moore, his experiences as a play call in other places. There was actually a pretty good debate about how much he did and didn't with the percentage they ran the ball down in Dallas. How much of a priority is running back for the Eagles this offseason?
I think as much as it ever has been. I expect them to approach the position kind of the way they did last year when they brought in Rashad Penny right at the start of the offseason, and then he never saw the field, which I guess one of the unanswered questions of the season, why they liked him so much early in free agency and why they soured on him in practices and training camp. I
think a question though, John? Because I had this with Mike Gill. I talked because Mike's a big Rashad Penny fan as well, and I'm like, doesn't the contract and what the Eagles did? I mean, they didn't give him any money from a standpoint of a contract, and they didn't play him. So doesn't that answer the question of, they thought he had nothing left? I mean, that's kind of how I look at it.
I think it was the fact that they targeted him so early in the offseason. They made him, I think he might have been their first free agent that they signed in the offseason. Clearly knowing that Miles Sanders was going to be leaving, bringing Rashad Penny in, they talked him up all summer as being part of the plan. Like this 3-headed running back with Kenny Gainwell and DeAndre Swift and then you have and Penny in the mix there. They were talking that up a lot during the offseason. That wasn't something we as fans made up out of whole cloth. So that's why, and it was never really an explanation why he was being. I mean, why didn't you just cut him then? Like, because he never saw the field.
That's more interesting. That is a legitimate, because you're right. They signed him early, but they signed him to a 1-year deal for, I had to look it up, $1.35 million with $600,000 guaranteed. I mean, that's like nothing.
But we kept hearing he led the league in average per carry when he was healthy, and if he can be healthy, he's going to be this. He can be this yards per carry monster guy. And
I think that was the hope. Yeah.
The
hope was that he had something left, and my assumption is, all right, they got him, and they said, oh, he's got nothing left. As to your question of why they kept him the whole year, that part to me is more interesting because they could have moved on with very little hurt from a financial perspective. And, maybe it was like break glass in case of emergency. Well, if Swift gets hurt, because Swift had a history of getting hurt. Kenny Gainwell is not, a guy who's going to handle 250 carries or 250 touches. Boston Scott's Boston Scott. He's more of a glue guy, just a break glass in case of emergency. But I think the contract tells you, all right, it was more of a lottery ticket than a plan, than a piece, a part of the plan is what I'm trying to say.
I guess so. I think that DeAndre Swift's performance, especially early in the season, was kind of a surprise as to how effective he was running the football. I don't think the Eagles entered the 23 season thinking that Swift was going to be as productive for them as they thought he was going to be, which is why I feel like they were really counting on Penny and Swift and Gainwell to be this 3-headed monster. And when it was certainly appeared starting in week 2 that Swift had some juice to him. He had that. He certainly looked like he was a perfect fit for the offense and what they were trying to do. That negated the need to have Penny on the field quite a bit. They still used Gainwell more than they should have early in the season as well. But I think with the running back situation, they just kind of throw a lot of stuff out there and see what works. And I think that's going to kind of be the approach this offseason. I think I would love to see them bring back DeAndre Swift. I thought he played really well. I thought he fit what the offense wanted to do. I think he'd be a good fit for what Kellen Moore wants to do. Swift is a decent receiver out of the backfield. The Eagles have not utilized running backs as receivers out of the backfield really at all over the last 2 years. They've just been focusing so much on Brown and Devontae that I think there's an opportunity there for a running back that has that skill set to flourish in Philadelphia. But if DeAndre Swift is going to get Miles Sanders money out there, I just don't think the Eagles are going to pay it. I don't think they're going to go out there and do that. And so I think that's where you see a day 2 running back pick, possibly a 3rd round running back as somebody who can work with Gainwell. And then maybe they sign some other lower tier free agent, maybe, like a J.K. Dobbins is out there, you get him on a cheap kind of 1-year deal or something like that. But it just kind of really depends what the market for Swift is out there, because he has to battle with Saquon Barkley, Josh Jacobs, Derrick Henry, Tony Pollard, Austin Eckler. If teams want a running back,
down the list,
he's down the list. So he may have to come back to Philadelphia on a 1-year deal.
Yeah.
I would say down the list. Wouldn't say way down the list. I think he's pretty comparable with those guys. But I think we all agree, if the Eagles get to set the bar on what they want to pay a running back, Swift is probably going to be above that. So they're going to have to extend to bring DeAndre Swift back. That would just be my reading. We got a long time to go before we get there. All right. We were talking about Nick Sirianni before you came on. Is he too emotional? Is this something that he can't change? Or is it all going to be okay because Big Dom's back on the side?
Big Dom's back.
And he'll keep Sirianni in check. Sirianni's kind of...
does anybody think Big Dom is the reason they lost games? No. I love Dom. I mean, people really believe this.
No, here's the question. Does Derek Gunn believe it?
No, Derek didn't say that. He didn't say that. He said, he basically said he lost his get-back coach, basically.
I think it seemed to me D-Gun was intimating that Sirianni's emotions got out of control when he didn't have his babysitter there on the sideline to help keep him in check. That's kind of how I read that. And that the loss of Big Dom down the stretch mattered more than we think it may have. I think the whole Big Dom story from the beginning was too much. It was just enough already. Just stop with the Big Dom. You're in your 3rd year as an NFL head coach. You've been to a Super Bowl. You have got to be able to control yourself. I'm sorry. I like that Nick Sirianni can look within himself and say there are things about myself we need to change, and that's great. In 2024, if he's managing his emotions better, then he will have learned something from the 2023 season, and all this will be part of his development as a head coach. He's a young head coach. He was inexperienced when he got the job. I think it's really interesting. You have seen in Nick Sirianni's 3 seasons, 3 very different Eagles teams, different results and different approaches by both him and the quarterback. You had in 2021 where he was taking this young group that no one was expecting anything of. They got off to this slow start. He demoted himself, took the play calling away from himself, seemed to really be able to rally the team around some kind of goofy speeches that we chuckled at, but the team really got behind, and he was able to get the most out of that group. And it seemed like his emotional intelligence was sky high after that season because of the way he was able to get themselves up off the mat. 2022, everything went right, and both he and Jalen Hurts handled it beautifully. Now it's easier to lead when everything is going your way, when all the breaks are falling your way, when you're playing 2nd and 3rd tier quarterbacks and you're getting a lot of luck to go along with the roster that you had. So he rode that beautifully. I think he got over his skis a little bit in the Super Bowl. I still remember, Jalen Hurts having to push his arms down when he was calling the Chiefs back. That's when you could start to see, I think, Sirianni's arrogance starting to get a little bit ahead of himself. And then they came into 2023, and I am convinced that he had the pressure ratcheted up so high on everyone to get back to the Super Bowl that it just was like a steam pot getting ready with the lid getting ready.
Yeah, I'm with you there.
The
expectations, man. That's what I think derailed this team. That's from my perspective.
I think him and the quarterback both had expectations so high that it made it a completely unpleasant and untenable atmosphere in that locker room. So that, the most miserable 10-1 team, when the most miserable 10-1 team did get blown out by the 49ers, it all came crashing down. And you have got to, as a leader, know how to adjust to the circumstances around you. This is what's driving me crazy about the Nick Sirianni talk and what's driving me crazy about the Jalen Hurts talk. People saying, well, how can you be critical of Jalen Hurts' stoicism when it worked out so well in 2022 and not in 2023? Because if you're going to be a leader of people, you have to know how to read the room and adjust. No, sometimes you have to be a little bit of a different person in order to get the most out of your teammates. If that is what is required of you and your position, whether it's on the football team, in a boardroom, in a newsroom, whatever it might happen to be, sometimes you have to adjust yourself and your personality to meet the needs of the people you're leading. And so I think that was a learning experience for Jalen Hurts this year and for Nick Sirianni to understand, read the room. What's happening right here? What does this team need? I thought Sirianni did a great job with that in 21. He did not do a great job of that in 2023 when things started to fall apart.
Yeah, John, I'm going to give Zach Berman a little hat tip. Zach will love this because he loves this saying, be the thermostat, not the thermometer. So, yeah, sometimes it takes different. You have to adjust the setting depending on what you have on a particular year, particular team. Well, there's a lot of stuff. We talked about Jalen Hurts. We talked about Nick Sirianni. A.J. Brown took a shot at you, John Stolnis. He took a shot at all of us. He said, Philly media is so lame. It's literally something every day. Then the fans believe the BS, the bullshit. They really should start raising prices of microphones and cameras because you people will say anything for views. I see why nobody likes us because we don't even like us. Speaking about Philadelphia. Your thoughts on A.J. Brown throwing us all in the same pots. Craig Carton, by the way, isn't even a Philly media member anymore.
Yeah.
Just your overriding thoughts.
I think, don't lump us in with Craig Carton. We're not doing that. He's not here. But I will say that in the course of finding things to discuss and to talk about, that I think sometimes Philly media, sports talk radio, podcast, we can kind of read too much into situations. I think the thing is, we're all searching for answers for things, right? We're searching for answers when a team does well. We're searching for answers and for reasons when a team underachieves and does poorly. The players and the coaching staff, they do not have to tell us any more than they want to tell us, but we do care about these teams probably more than is healthy. And I'll lay that out there. We probably do take our sports seriously to a point where maybe there's
no probably. You can take out the probably.
Yeah, we care a little too much about sports at times, and we make it really personal for us. And so I think A.J. Brown is seeing that and not really understanding that as far as, and I think you see this in New York, you see this in Boston, you see this especially in the Northeast. No, in Tennessee, you probably don't see it like this. Folks in Nashville, they don't get as wrapped around the axle about their football teams because they've only had their football team for like 20 some odd years. The Philadelphia sports teams have been around for generations, and for generations, there was losing season after losing season. How many heartbreaks have we had during the course of our lives with these teams? And so every time a team gets close, like this Eagles team got close in 2022 and just fell a little bit short, and then you had a season like last year, people want to know why. What happened? Why weren't you able to get over the mountain? What can we do to fix it? What can we do to make sure we get over the mountain? Not understanding, of course, there's no quick fix in sports, and there isn't a secret formula to winning the World Series or the Super Bowl or the NBA title. So I get for a player why it can be frustrating, because you had, according to, from a player's perspective, who wasn't raised here, you went to the Super Bowl the year before and you had a down year this year. What's the big deal? For Philadelphia sports fans, it's not just about this year and last year. It's about the 30 to 40 seasons we've experienced before that, and it all gets lumped together, and we're searching for answers where there really aren't any answers for us to find. So sometimes we fill in the gaps and make them up.
All right, for our own edification, own purpose, now we don't know yet. John, I'm assuming you're assuming that Nick Sirianni and, well, maybe Sirianni's you're assuming Howie Roseman's going to the combine next week, right?
Oh, they're going. Yeah, I should have mentioned that. They're Tuesday. They're speaking Tuesday afternoon, 1:30 is Howie scheduled. 1:45 Nick Sirianni scheduled. Could be,
That's good to know. Good to hear. John also told me before the show started there are upwards of 10 teams that aren't going to make their coach available and or their general manager at the combine because they're not going. How can
12 coaches, 6 GMs are not speaking as scheduled. So
that we'll just talk about the 6 general managers who have no one there. The 6 teams who are going to have no one there. No coach, no general manager. I think it's a travesty if you don't have either one of them there, but more so the general manager, and that's why more general managers be there. How do you justify that to your fan base? How do you go, yeah, we got more important things to do around the office this week than actually go and watch and meet with and get a feel for potential draft picks? How does an organization justify that? Certainly to their fan base and even to themselves, to their owner. How do they explain to their owner? We didn't want to put you out the $250 for the flight or the $125 a night for the hotel in Indianapolis. How do you do that if you're an NFL franchise?
I mean, it's got to be sanctioned by the owner, right? I mean, I would imagine that if the owner wanted his guys to go to the combine, they're going to the combine. So you must have a lot of trust in your player personnel, your draft scouting guys, that to go ahead and be your eyes and ears there. But you're right. I can't imagine what else is happening on the home front that you would choose to not go to really one of the marquee off-season events on the NFL calendar. I mean, it's not just where you go to see, who's doing which guys you might draft. It's where GMs get together to talk trade. It's where they get together to, talk with prospective free agents. I mean, it's kind of like baseball's winter meetings in a lot of ways. There's a lot of networking that goes on there. And I've never attended one, but this is everything you read about and see. Like a lot of deals are talked about, are done, relationships are made at the scouting combine. So it's not just a matter of like a GM like Howie Roseman looking at the cornerbacks, running the shuttle drills and figuring out which one he might want to take in round number 2. There's a whole lot. And I would be up in arms if Howie Roseman and the coaching staff wasn't going to the scouting combine. There better be a really good reason for that if they decided not to do that.
Yeah, they're going. Here's the coaches. I did the coaches because I got the schedule right before the show. So the GMs are more important because I think John's right. I think, the bigger part is the stuff behind the scenes, laying foundations for contract extensions, potential trades, tampering before you can tamper. All that stuff happens at the combine. In division, Mike McCarthy's not going to be there. Brian Daboll's not going to be there. Matt LaFleur from the Packers, Kyle Shanahan, long season, blah, blah. Sean McVay, he's the one who started this from the Rams. I assume Les Snead's not going to be there. Mike McDonald, rookie coach of the Seahawks. Dennis Allen, Saints. Jody Sky, Robert Saleh's not going to be there. Sure, you're thrilled with that. Gerard Mayo, another rookie coach, Patriots. Mike Tomlin, been around forever, is not going to be there. Chargers, Jim Harbaugh's not going to be there. Raiders, Antonio Pierce. Those are the coaches that are not speaking. There's 6 GMs. That to me is a bigger deal because of what you just said, John. Yeah, it's weird. Now, ever since the pandemic, we have this Zoom, as we're doing right now, StreamYard type society. They have the in-house feed. Sean McVay's talked about it at length. Thinks his staff can get more done at home. Just happens to be home, has really nice weather. I think that might have something to do with. I don't know. It's just the way we're going in sports. Is it, the Eagles, to their credit, and I gave them a hat tip, typically I would say maybe they take advantage of this groundswell and shut people down, but they aren't. So I give them credit for that. But are we heading down this path and it's just going to be this way moving forward more and more?
You know what? It might be a cycle, but I do believe some, if it does seem to be like a trend, that trend will probably reverse at some point. I mean, I don't know. I think you're going to get diminishing returns if you do it this way. If you have your scouting guys watching all of the draft picks and talking all the draft picks there, and then getting on a Zoom and and doing it that way, updating the GM and the coaching staff on what they found. And, you're trying to arrange things over Zoom. I mean, anybody who has tried to arrange interviews and done job interviews and stuff like that online, it's very different, and you have a different feel when you're remote and you don't get that interaction with a player or another GM or anything. So, it doesn't, I get it. Maybe maybe I'm old school. Maybe we're all old school. Maybe you don't need the face-to-face anymore, but I think there's still a lot of value in that.
Andy Reid going to show up?
Yeah, Andy's not on that list.
He somehow has won 2 straight Super Bowls. So why would you want to do what Andy Reid does? He's only painting himself as one of the Hall of Fame coaches.
Well, when you win, you want to go. You want to be lauded. Right. You want to see your subjects. You want to get all the congrats and, hey, you're great. And Andy is great. So
I was going to say, you really going to lay that at Andy Reid?
No, I'm just saying. But if you win, I think you want to show up. That's all I'm saying.
I think Andy wants to show up because he wants the team to be good again next year, more so than any hosanna he's going to get from any of his counterparts on it. That's just my read of Andy Reid, the person, rather than, hey, I'm showing up so I can get patted on my big fat back. No, I don't think that's Andy Reid. All right, so with the fact that the Eagles coach is going to be there with Howie Roseman, they made the decision to keep Nick Sirianni this year when it was teetering on the fence as to whether he was going to stay or not. Let me give you a hypothetical. I love my hypotheticals, right, Johnny? Let's say there's something to Craig Carton's report, and I'm saying ahead of time, I don't believe that. I believe he's.
By the way, it's not a report, but go ahead.
Thank you for the correction, John. You're right. It's just him spitballing. Can I use the phrase spitballing? Because you're right.
Appropriate.
It's not quite a report. But there's something to it, and it sticks. And we find out what it is. And it's something that concerns the coach and him and his control and whatever. It's just something that when the story breaks, we go, oh, shoot, now I see what Cart was talking about. And that's to do with the coach. Can they double back? Can they go, yeah, we need to move on from the coach now? And if they do, which of the 2 coordinators do you think they would elevate to head coach? Or do you think they'd, well, after everyone has signed and gotten a job and gotten a gig, go back out and try and find a new coach if for some reason Nick Sirianni had to be let go before the season starts?
Well, if something were to come down where they had to let Nick Sirianni go, that would be amazing. I mean, that news would be earth-shattering at this point.
Yeah, I'm saying it's highly unlikely.
Yeah.
But in the minute percent chance it happens, what would the Eagles do?
I don't think you can get a new head coach from the outside at this point in the offseason. And my guess is Kellen Moore would probably get elevated to head coach. He's, been rumored to be a head coaching candidate in the past. It's kind of I think it's surprising that he hasn't had a head coaching job. Yes, right. I mean, he hasn't been a head coach yet. I'm not forgetting something, right?
No, Kellen Moore. No,
he's got interviews with the Eagles included.
Yes,
right, because he was a hot commodity after a couple of those seasons in Dallas, and so I think the natural evolution would be to make Kellen Moore the head coach. He continues to call plays. He continues to run the offense, and you probably elevate some of the guys that he's bringing in, or you bring in somebody from the outside who can help Kellen Moore run his offense. But I don't think you can call Bill Belichick at that point and say, hey, are you interested in returning to the sideline in 2024? I don't think at that point Mike Vrabel is a guy you call to at the last minute come on in here and try and right the ship. I think you'd probably. I mean, the only guy that would make sense is Belichick, because obviously there would have been so much turmoil in the organization that you had to make a move like this, that you would want to bring in something from the outside that has a ton of experience as a head coach running a locker room and can put a lid on things. Now, Belichick was not always the easiest guy to play for. It doesn't seem like many people really enjoyed playing for him. So that might not be the elixir if that were to happen. But I think the most likely scenario would be Kellen Moore becomes your head coach.
I agree with that. At John Stolnis, make sure you follow John on X. It's baseball season too, so does a tremendous job covering the Phillies. You got hitting season. Eagles pod is Eye on the Enemy, so you can listen to John on both avenues, and hopefully the Phillies get you through the summer. Look like a legitimate contender again, so we'll see how that shakes out. My last question is about the coaching staff, which I think is going to be announced pretty soon, maybe even over the next couple of days before Howie and Nick talk out in Indianapolis, would be my guess. Just speculation, but that would be my guess. It's looking at least like there's going to be more people on the offensive staff kept than I thought was going to be kept. And I think Kevin Patullo is obviously going to be back. Aaron Moorhead's going to be back. I think Jamal Singleton might be back. I think Jason Michael might be back. Is that a good thing or bad thing from your perspective? Because it seems like maybe Nick Sirianni does have a little bit of power left and they haven't usurped everything. Or is that straddling the fence a bad thing?
I don't think it's straddling the fence. I think if you're going to keep Nick Sirianni as the head coach and not totally turn things over to Kellen Moore, you got to give him some people that he's comfortable with, some people that he trusts. You've got to have a little bit, because, I mean, remember, the offense, it was not like the defense. There were things about the Eagles offense under Nick Sirianni that worked. It needed freshening up. It needs a new voice. It needs a new play caller with that's perfectly clear. But I think you do need some of the remnants. You don't want, you need to have some comfort level with the players and some guys from maybe the old coaching staff that they did still trust and did still like. We don't know which members of the coaching staff, the players, they would never come out and tell us which guys they lost faith in and which guys they still did have faith in. But I don't think you're straddling the fence there. I think it's necessary that if you're going to keep the head coach, you can't wipe out his offensive coaching staff and bring in a whole new group of guys so that Nick is the only guy in the room who doesn't know anybody. So I think there's got to be, can you imagine that you just kind of sitting in the corner, like, when do I get to talk? Yeah. So I think that's good that there's some remnants of his offensive coaching staff staying in place with the new guys coming in. I think that's the best way to move it.
All right. Since John went there, I'm going to follow up. Under over at bats for Whit Merrifield this year, 350. Are you going under or over?
That's a good number. I hope it's under, because if it's over that means something has gone wrong with Johan Rojas or Brandon Marsh or Bryson Stott. So I'll say under, because I have confidence in Marsh and I have confidence in Stott. And I do believe that Johan Rojas has enough defensive ability in center field so that even if he's a 260 hitter, that's perfectly fine. That's perfectly fine for the 9-hole spot in this lineup. So I'll say that this Whit Merrifield, I'll say under 350 for Whit Merrifield.
Smart minds think alike. That's exactly what I said on WIP the other night. Appreciate it, Johnny. Yes, we like having Stolnis on, because it's nice every once in a while to have someone on who actually needs to have his hair styled, unlike most of the two hosts and most of our guests.
Yeah, Coach, comb doesn't touch this. You can't do anything. It just shave it all back.
better than Matt.
I'd love to have those problems, John.
Exactly. Johnny, yes, always a pleasure, bud. We'll get you back up in a couple of weeks. Thanks for jumping in today.
Sounds good. Thanks, guys.
John Stolnis, Bleeding Green Nation, Eye on the Enemy football podcast and hidden season for baseball. Is a good baseball writer too. Thank you for bringing that up, John, so I could sneak in a baseball question. All right, he's McMullen. I'm McDonald. Speaking of bald, Ed Kratz going to join us coming up in about
I feel more comfortable with Ed. Yeah.
Oh, we love Kratz. Eddie K, Special Ed. You can call him whatever you want. He'll be with us in 15 minutes here on Birds 365.
Go to get your